Welcome back. I'm still with Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Before we get on to the latest ruse by the migrants to game our asylum system using the European Convention on Human Rights, let's quickly sort of conclude our conversation about judges, because I think we've got a massive problem. Susan Carr proving it. That guy Hugo Norton-Taylor, I'm not saying that the sins of the father should be visited on the son, but, you know, it so happens that his father, Richard Norton-Taylor, 80-year-old Guardian writer, lifelong campaigner against Israel and for Palestine, only in the last couple of weeks, you know, tweeting and posting on social media all about the genocide by the Jews and so on and so forth. So you have to question what kind of household was Hugo Norton-Taylor brought up in, and I wonder why he reached that pro-Palestinian decision. So that's just one example of why we need to look at our judges. We need to judge our judges. We need to change our system, because I had a barrister on the show last week, Andrew Eborn, about this very case, and I said, well, can't we sort of reprimand Hugo Norton-Taylor? Or he said that there is no mechanism in this country by which judges can be sacked, punished, or even reprimanded. They are literally above reproach. And that has to change. And in fact, the people have to take control of the judges like they do in America. If necessary, we vote for them. They are worried about us because they don't care about us right now. We need something. We need to be able to judge the judges, because they're making, particularly these immigration judges, are making catastrophically idiotic decisions.
I actually agree with you. I think that we are at the point now where there have been a succession of judgments that are so obviously counter to the national interest that we need to have a debate about how our judges are appointed. And I really think it may be time, I'm afraid, to explore the possibility of elected judges as they have in America, because these judges are just getting far too above themselves. They will claim that all they do is apply the law, you know, they don't have much flexibility. But if that were the case, it wouldn't be being asked to make a judgment. It's about how the law is interpreted. And in most of the cases that we've highlighted here on Talk, the judge at the highest level is involved because the individual, invariably a failed asylum seeker, has appealed and appealed and appealed again against deportation. And finally, some lofty person up there who thinks that they're above being criticised makes a judgment that is just so counter to any common sense and is clearly out of all tune with what people actually want from our judicial system, that it begs the question, what has got to change here? Either we've got to change the laws that they're applying, and in many cases that goes right back to the ECHR and the absolute imperative of leaving that dreadful structure, or we're going to have to change the judges. It's one or the other, isn't it? Because we can't go on like this.
Absolutely, yeah, we need to take a very good look at what these judges are doing, and that's part of the process of choosing them, perhaps democratically, but they should also be interviewed, I think. And I think that some body or other needs to discern, needs to establish that these people will act in terms of the law, and not be influenced by their own politics, because what's going on with these tribunal judges is they're all Guardian readers. They're all left-wingers. They are working against what they see as a repressive, racist state. And that kind of thing has to be stamped out. And that kind of brings us nicely... Oh, by the way, let's just remember the most egregious recent case, a migrant being an illegal alien being allowed to stay because he's an Albanian. If he was sent back, he's spent 2 years in jail, came out, he's a crook, about to be deported, allowed to stay by an idiotic judge because he said, if you deport me to Albania, my 10-year-old son doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets. Now, you know, these are the kind of asinine, bovine decisions that are being made, which brings us nicely to our next story. Looks like our cross-channel illegal friends are onto a new ruse. What they're doing now, this refers to a particular family of Kurdish Turks. They're in Calais. Anyway, basically, they sent their 2 kids across the channel on their own, aged 6 and 9. 6 and 9. They sent their kids across on one of those small boats on their own. Of course, the kids make it to Dover or Folkestone or wherever it was. And now the parents are suing to be allowed into Britain under the terms of the European Convention on Human Rights, because they have a right to a family life and their family is in Britain. I would say, yes, you certainly do, and we'll just get your kids out of Britain and reunite them with you in Calais. How's that? There, your right to a family life. But this will work, won't it? This is the new way to game our pathetically lax asylum rules.
Well, I wouldn't be returning those children to those parents. Those parents should be imprisoned for neglect. I mean, what kind of parent who wants a family life dispatches their child to make a life-threatening journey, terrifying it must be for little ones, across the channel? A parent like that is not a fit parent. So their claim should be disqualified immediately on those grounds alone. And if they are to come to Britain, then they should be immediately imprisoned on our shores. But I'd rather they were imprisoned wherever it was they came from, because I don't think we should have to pay for them. Those poor little ones, well, what are we to do with them? I think we're going to have to, under the current system, we're going to have to look after them. And that is a very tragic situation. But they are not the children of responsible, loving parents, are they? By definition, no proper parent would behave in such a way. And what this just shows us is, I suppose it's another example of what we already know. You know, these opportunists are finding ever more creative and reprehensible, frankly, ways to game the system, which is all set up in their favour. I mean, the other trick that is frequently used and is a huge drain on local authorities is asylum seekers claiming that they are children when they are quite obviously not children at all. And you know what they do? They will refuse to give the fingerprint or DNA evidence that is required to prove that they're clearly over 18. And that ties councils in knots for considerable periods and runs up huge legal bills. Again, if you're not prepared to provide whatever it is, the samples that prove that you're a child, then you should just be dispatched back from where you came anyway. But we shouldn't be in this situation. Nobody should be coming across the channel. And if we simply turned back the boat, either A or B said, yeah, sure, keep on coming, the minute you get to the UK, you will be imprisoned, then that would pretty quickly stop it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's 2 words. A whole policy could be revolving around this, and I suspect Reform will instigate a policy based on this. It's detain and deport. Simple as that, simple as that. But here, to go back to these judges, the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, and by extension decisions by the European Court of Human Rights, they're a big problem because the ECHR, Article 8, is the right to a family life. Now, the thing about going back to our discussion on judges is people say, oh, we've got to get, if we leave the ECHR, everything will be fine. It won't. Because even under the terms of the ECHR, these people do not have to be allowed to stay. They're allowed to stay because the judges choose to interpret the European Convention on Human Rights in the way that they do. In other words, in the left-wing way, let the migrants stay, 75% of them. So getting rid of the ECHR is one thing. That would help. But trust me, unless we get judges who are genuinely independently inclined, with independent minds, and are not prejudiced, not biased, they'll find a way of letting these migrants stay. So, yes, let's leave the ECHR, but as we just said, let's have a system whereby we can trust our judges, because at the moment we cannot trust them.
No, we absolutely can't trust them. And at the moment, no one's having this debate, really, are they? But I mean, it's not outlandish in America. There's nothing anti-democratic about it, quite the opposite. I actually remember going back to the days of absolute turmoil over Brexit, when MPs were doing everything in their power, Remainer MPs, which was unfortunately the majority of them, to thwart Brexit. Do you remember that? A series of judges tried to side with the Remainer MPs. And a newspaper ran a front page picture.
Enemies of the people, or the enemies of the
calling
mail.
them the enemies of the people, which they were. But all hell broke loose. You know, you'd have thought that that newspaper had somehow threatened to kind of, do physical harm to those judges instead of making a political comment, which they clearly were the enemies of the people because they were making rulings which ran counter to the biggest democratic mandate for anything in British history.
Yeah.
So
I was amazed by the response to that Daily Mail front page, because I date back to the days where mocking judges was a national sport. We always, at Fleet Street, we used to, take the mickey out of a judge every single day. It was our fun pastime. And then suddenly, for some reason, we've come back to sort of revering them in a much too over-reverential way, and the reaction to that enemy is, you can't say that about judges. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, we just did. We're going to
Exactly. So let me ask the audience: do you think we need a better system by which we choose our judges? Perhaps elect them somewhere or other. We need to have a say over these people because they are making decisions that I think are harmful to this country. Don't forget, these tribunal judges are routinely allowing paedophiles who serve long jail sentences, come out of British jails, they're foreigners, due for deportation. They're routinely allowed to stay because they got their own kids. Right to a family life, Article 8. Now, if they're making those kind of decisions that endanger British children, the British people, then we're in trouble. We're in trouble. And therefore, I want to ask you what you think we should do about our judges. How can we get a better system to choose them, to put them in office, to make sure we can get back to what we should be able to do, and that's trust our judges, because right now I don't think we do, and that's terrible.